time no see, everyone. I took a week off. Dorian, are you ready to be back to filming? I took a week off because I was on vacation last week. I just got back this past weekend and I did not end up getting any videos pre-filmed because I was rushing to finish, or not rushing, but striving to finish the first draft of Take What You Want. Also, the lighting's gonna be wonky. The sun is really not vibing. I finished it, and yeah, so that took up the majority of my time before I went on vacation. I'll probably talk a little bit about my trip and my chat chill and get ready with me at the end of the month, just kind of telling you guys about it, but I went on a girls trip with my friends, and it was amazing, and it was just a really, really nice and necessary time with them. So anyways, but now we are back into videos, back into normal routine. So today because of kind of being out of sorts with being on vacation and such, I didn't really have a lot of time to think about what I wanted to film. This is also going to be so annoying, but I'm going to talk about all of the books that I am dying to reread. For one reason or another, I'll kind of like explain as I go through, but these are all books that I have like high priority for. I feel bad almost like when I reread books. I think because then like I'm not getting new books for you guys like to give recommendations to, and also then it feels like I'm like I have so many books that I want to read that then I'm like I don't have time to reread. But I used to reread books all the time, like before I kind of started doing YouTube. So these are some of the ones that are high priority on my list. Okay, we just scooted like way farther back, so now like I'm out of or at least like my face is out of the direct sun for the most part. Now ready to jump in. So these are in no particular order, they're just how I pulled the books off my shelves. Oof. Whatever, my hair's already so dirty. So, first up, The Truth About Tomorrow by B. Celeste. So this is the second book in the Truth Duet, and I read this one years ago, I think like 4 years ago. It was one of my top books of 2020, and the reason that I want to reread this one is because it is one of the biggest age gaps I've ever read, and probably one of the most taboo because of the age gap and everything, and I just want to reread it now and still see if it stands up as one of my favorites and see if I still buy into it the same way that I did years ago. I'm thinking I still will, because if anything, like I've read more taboo stuff than this at this point, so I feel like I will still be on board with it, but I'm just genuinely curious just because, like, in case if you don't know, this is like a Guardian Ward one, and at the time this was probably the first one that I ever read like that. I gotta reread it and see if it still holds up like I remember it does. A QB Tyler book that I want to reread. I want to reread Love Unexpected as well, but I also chose Unconditional because here's the thing. This is one of QB's most popular books, and I think I gave this one maybe a 4-star when I read it, which is still good. Like, I still like this one. However, I love so many of her other books, and this one seems to be one of the most popular. And for this one to like not be, I remember it not being my favorite. I'm like curious, like, was it too early in my taboo journey? Like, what was I like? I don't know. I'm just curious, like, was it maybe my mood at the time that I didn't like, that it wasn't a favorite? I don't know. I need to give it another go. Next, this again was a favorite book of 2020, and I've actually looked to see, there's no audiobook of this one, and actually no, I might leave this one out because I am craving just like having my heart shredded by a book right now. Forbidden by Tabitha Suzuma. This was in my first ever Banned, Forbidden, and Taboo reading vlog. This is one of the most taboo books I've ever read, and it is, I will say, this is the most heartbreaking book I've ever read in my entire life. I remember going into this one, I was like, there's no way I'm going to actually like this. I remember debating even putting it in the vlog because I was like, is it too taboo? And also I had to buy the physical copy because it like wasn't in Kindle, which I never used to like buy physical copies without reading the book. So the fact that I did that, I don't know, it was just like destiny that I read this book. It's the most insane, gut-wrenching book I've ever read. It follows Locken and Maya. They are siblings. I can't, you know what? You gotta experience it for yourself. If it even seems like something in the realm of possibility that you might be interested in, it truly, I think about this book on like a weekly basis, honestly. And I just need to do a reread of it, especially now knowing how everything shakes out. I need to know. I need to do the reread on it. So another favorite I think of 2020 was Dark Notes. You'll notice that I feel like right now I'm getting to a lot. I have 2 newer ones, but I do have a lot from years ago that I read that I just want to reread again and see, like, are they still my favorites? Do they still hold up? You know, I think that there was such like a magical quality about so many of the books that I read in 2020, I think, because that was truly like the only escape that I had out of the real world. Like, I think so many other people. So especially with some of these like Dark Notes, I remember absolutely loving this one. This was one of my first student teacher books I ever read, and that is like my favorite romance trope of all time, so I want to go back and read it for that. The only reason that I think I haven't gone back and reread this one is because it does have one of the most traumatizing scenes I've ever read in my entire life. It has animal violence to do with a cat in here, and if you guys know anything about me, you know how like precious cats are to me, so that was horrible to read. So I like need to remember where that part is so I can avoid it whenever I do a reread. But this is a student teacher, like music teacher and student BDSM romance, and I loved it back when I read it, and I just want to reread it and see, yeah, if I still love it the same. Now, one from this year that I read that I already want to do a reread on because I truly do love it that much, and I think there's going to be an entire Legacy of God reread, but the number one I want to reread is God of Wrath. This is the third book of the Legacy of God series by Rena Kent. It was my favorite book when I originally read them. I truly haven't stopped thinking about it, and this is probably going to be my favorite book of all of 2024. Truly, Jeremy and Cecily, just like, I don't know what it was about them. They just clicked with me. I loved everything about this book. He stalks her. He's a mafia prince. The way that he will do anything for, like, I can't. I truly can't. I loved this book so much. It was one of those where as I was reading it, I like didn't want to finish it. Like I wanted to slow down because I didn't want it to be done, but also I like couldn't put it down, which is I feel like that's a hard thing for me to achieve because normally I'm just like, if I love something, I'm like, I'm just going to keep going with it. But genuinely, I found myself slowing down so that way like I wouldn't finish this one, which that just like doesn't really happen. I love it so much. And another newer one, I think I read this one last year maybe or the year before, but Mercy by Sara Cate. This is the fourth book in the Salacious Players Club series, and again, this is my favorite of the entire series, and I just really miss Bo and Maggie, and I just want to reread their book. Like this isn't one where I'm like, I want to see if it still stands up, because like I know that it still stands up. Like I read this one pretty recently, but I just loved these two. This was the first book that I've ever read where it's the older woman, younger man trope, and it really, really worked for me. And also especially with this one being dom sub, but it's like flipped where she's the dom and he's the sub. I just don't normally like that. But somehow, some way, this just like everything worked in this book for me. And Bo, he wasn't like a flop in the first book, like what's his face from Birthday Girl. Like he's way more of a flop, the ex-boyfriend, because like the first book is an ex-boyfriend's dad. And Bo, like I feel like had potential, but truly like I didn't realize like how much potential he truly had as a character. And Sara Cate just blew me away with this one. So I'm really excited to reread Bo and Maggie at some point. And again, I think this is an audio. And actually, I think this one's an audio as well. And I think isn't Teddy Hamilton Jeremy, which like get out. So a lot of these I want to do rereads of on audio just so that way like it doesn't feel as if it's taking away from my like physical reading time, if that makes sense. I got 3 that were my top books of 2022. Yeah, not last year, the previous year, 2022. Also, you may notice that certain ones are missing, like the Off Balance series. I've already reread those 3 or 4 times, so I'm not including them. Same with the Twisted series. I recently did a reread on those. So some of my like favorites, you're like, why are you not including those? I've already done rereads on them, but I have not done rereads on the Addicted/Calloway Sisters series, and I really, really, really want to do a reread. I think I'm just craving like comfort like comfort characters right now, and truly like these characters just feel very real, and they're very flawed, and they're very fleshed out, and they're very character driven, so you do end up feeling like very, very connected and invested in their stories, and I'm really craving that right now. So specifically, I mean, the most I want to read is Kiss the Sky, just because this one is my favorite book out of them all. This is Rose and Connor's book, and I think if I were to pick up any random one out of the series, it would be this one. But I would also really obviously like to reread Hot House Flower, because this is Reich and Daisy's first book as well. I obviously loved this one. It's up there in my ranking. I can't remember where I would have ranked it, but it's probably within my top 3 of that. And then last but not least, I want to go back to where it all started with Lillian Lowe. This was not my favorite book of theirs. I think my favorite book of theirs was Addicted for Now, which is book 3, but I just pulled this one off for the sake of it because it's like the first one in the series and where it all starts, and I feel like I gotta go back to the beginning with them all. But again, I don't want to like reread this whole entire series physically because it's 10 books. They're like, I only have them on paperback. Although, actually, I think they are in Kindle Unlimited now. But I don't want to reread them physically. So I need to look if there are audiobooks. Because I don't know, actually. I've never looked to see if there are audios for these. I would assume there would be. Why wouldn't there be? Next up, The Words by Ashley Jade. Another top book whenever I read it, whatever year that was. Rockstar, second chance, toxic, angsty, messy romance. I loved everything about this book. I love the grittiness of Phoenix, and I love the resilience of Lennon. And it's just one that I'm like, I know I'm gonna love it even more on the reread and appreciate it even more on the reread. And I really want to read the consequence and the, what is the one with the little heart covers, the like duet that follows other characters from this. Like, it's not, I don't think you have to read this one in order to read that duet, but I do kind of want to do that, just that way I can like re-up my, or refresh, jeez. Can you tell it's been a while since I filmed? Refresh my knowledge of those side characters before I read that duet. So I want to reread this one, but I loved this book so much on the first read through that I think it's still gonna hit the same on the second. Now I have two Penelope Douglas books, Birthday Girl and Credence. Birthday Girl I want to reread because this was my first ever Penelope Douglas book. This was also my first ever indie published romance that I ever read. Actually, wait, no, I think The Deal. I think actually I might have read The Deal by Elle Kennedy, which now obviously that's traditionally published, this is too. But I think that might have been one of the first ever indie romances I ever read. It's where it all started for me. And I have never, ever gone back and reread this book, and I need to do that. Honestly, maybe I should. It's my birthday on Saturday, so maybe I should reread it for that. But this is an ex-boyfriend's dad. It was also like slow burn and taboo, and like genuinely like opened my eyes into what romance could be. I just remember I remember literally like waking up in the morning early before work to like read this, and then like rushing home after work to keep reading it because I had the physical copy. I didn't even own a Kindle at that point. And it was just, it was like the best feeling reading this. And I just want to reread it again and see if it still holds up like that. I know it'll hold up. I'm just curious because I always say that like this and Hideaway and like Kill Switch are kind of my three favorite Penelope Douglas books. And I've reread Hideaway and Kill Switch, and I still stand by those being up there. But I want to reread Birthday Girl because I feel like it's not fair to Hideaway and Kill Switch since I've reread those. So I need to read this one too. And the other one is Credence because again, I read this one years ago, and I remember just being sort of surprised at who she ended up choosing in this one. And I just want to go back and reread it now and see if I feel differently knowing the outcome. Because honestly, the one that she picked was not my favorite. And I feel like now, if current Michaela was reading this, I actually think I would be like all on board with the one that she does actually pick. But I think at the time I was kind of like, oh, you're just like a little much, where now like nothing really surprises me. Like Jeremy Volkov, like nothing really surprises me anymore. So I think I would actually like really be on board with her choice. So I kind of want to reread it knowing that. And also just because this book like so many scenes live rent free. So like why not re-experience the whole thing, right? Haunting Adeline. I really want to reread Haunting Adeline because that was a favorite book of mine, a top 10 when I read that one. Still love that book so much. Here's the thing with Haunting Adeline. I remember when I read this one. Now, don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars. Like, I loved it. I love this duet as a whole. But this book, I remember reading it in, like, the first half. I remember being like, this is so slow. And this is a huge book. Also, I cracked the spine on this when I read it, which I, like, literally never do. And I remember being like, this book is moving so slow. Like, oh my, like, kind of, like, losing my mind a little bit with it. But then, like, I loved it so much that I kind of, like, looked past the beginning where I was like, oh my gosh, can we like get a move on? So I'm curious now if I reread it, if I would still feel like the beginning part of it drags on, or now if because I love the like series as a whole so much, if that would bother me. I don't know. So I want to do a reread. Again, I think I'd probably do the audiobook. We're on to our last little stack here. The Unrequited by Saffron Kent. I've talked about this book a lot of how I want to reread it because this was, again, actually, I think I read this one before Dark Notes. I genuinely think this was my first ever student-teacher romance, and I loved it so much. It is still my favorite Saffron Kent book, and I recommend it a lot, and I always say that it's a favorite, but again, I haven't read it in like 4, almost 5 years at this point, and I want to reread it. Thomas and Layla, I remember being obsessed with them, being obsessed with how obsessed Layla is, and it's just been a really long time since I've read a Saffron Kent book, and I just love her heroine. Like, you either love her heroines or you don't, but I'm one of those people that like loves them. And I remember like Layla literally gets like a tattoo on her belly button, like for Thomas at one point, and he's a married professor. I respect the level of unhingedness in this book, obviously, Layla, and yeah, I want to do a reread of it really badly. Another student teacher one, all-time favorite book that I have somehow never reread is Sweet Dandelion by Macaulay Smelter. Again, a book that I constantly say is one of my all-time favorite books, and yet I haven't reread it. And I don't know why. I really need to. I think because it was just like, maybe it was almost like lightning in a bottle at the time that I read it, that it just genuinely like punched my gut reading it. And like, I'm almost worried that I'm like, what if it doesn't hit the same? Like, I almost just want to like preserve its memory, which is like odd, right? But I don't know. I really do want to do a reread of it because it's just genuinely like a god tier book of mine of all time. We also have Even If It Hurts by Marnie Mann. So this is a rare one. I actually originally read this book on audio, which I like don't really read new books on audio because I struggle with like following the plot. But this one I had no issues with, and it literally was a favorite book of last year. It was top 3. I think it was actually my second favorite book that I read last year. Crazy. It's a love triangle romance, which again, I don't love, but this one truly, like, I think about this final chapter in this book again on like probably a monthly basis. Like, it stays living in my head. And I remember when I met Marnie Mann at Book Bonanza last year, I had this book with me to sign, and then I also got When Ashes Fall from her. And I remember like passing her my books, and I was like, oh my god, like this one just like I bawled at, like I sat, like I had to go for a walk. I was like a wreck after. And she thought that I was talking about When Ashes Fall, because obviously that one is very like heartbreaking and very emotional. And I was like, oh no, I'm talking about this one. I was like, I'm talking about this book. I feel like she wrote this book for me. I feel like this book was specifically written to just like rip open some of my old wounds. And you know what? I kind of love that. So I really need to reread it. But this time I actually want to read it physically so I can like mark it up. Y'all knew it was coming. We got Manacled by Sen-Lin Yu, which actually I will be doing a reread on this when it is traditionally published. I think, is it called Alchemy or Alchemized? So this started as a Harry Potter fan fiction, obviously Hermione and Draco. It's like Handmaid's Tale meets Harry Potter. Very dark. Like, yes, it obviously is a romance, but it's genuinely like almost like a war drama book. It is, talked about this before, it's truly one of the most masterful things I've ever read in my entire life. And I love it so much. And I'm very happy that Sen-Lin Yu got like a traditional publishing deal. And I will for sure be buying and reading it when it is a traditional book, because one, I want to see like what changed, what's different, but also because I really want to support Sen-Lin Yu, because obviously you can't do that when it's just fan fiction. So very excited to reread this one whenever. I think it comes out next year. I think it's 2025, maybe like early 2025. And last but not least, I do have 2 YAs that one of these I've actually reread. I think I've reread this book maybe 4 times already, but I want to reread the whole series again. And that is the Arc of the Scythe trilogy by Neil Shusterman, which actually I think more books are coming out in this series, which I'm really excited for. This is one of my all-time favorite YA dystopian series. It's basically in a world where no one dies. Like, it's like our society, but just no one dies anymore, so you can keep like resetting. I love this trilogy so much. And yeah, I've done multiple rereads on this book in particular, but I want to reread the whole trilogy again. And yeah, again, same with Carve the Mark. I think I've maybe reread this book twice, but I think I've only read the second book once. Maybe I've actually read this like 3 times, but I've only read the second book once. And I don't really remember how this world ends, but I love Veronica Roth's writing, and I remember loving this series. It's like sci-fi YA. There's like a little bit of romance, like star-crossed lovers romance. Oh, I ate it up. And I want to reread it because I don't really remember how the last book ends, which is like bizarre because I remember like everything about this one. So I want to reread that series as well. So anyways, that is everything that I at least have on here right now that I want to reread. Who knows, I might have missed something, but at least for right now, that's a good crop of them. So, or like, yeah, you might not have seen like Devil's Night series on here because I've already done a reread on all those recently. I did audios this year of those, so there's a lot that I already have, but yeah. Anyways, that is it for today's video. I don't know what is going to be up Friday, quite frankly. I don't know if I'm going to do like a birthday video this year. Normally I do one of like, I think I did like 26 book couples or like 26 books I love, 27 like book couples I love. I don't know if I'm gonna do like 28 something this year. We'll see. I have the week obviously to kind of figure out what I want to do. So let me just get back on track with my life a little bit and then we will see. So anyways, that is it for today's video and I will see you when I see ya.